We're continuing to follow breaking news. President Trump meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders right now in the East Room at the White House. Trump focused on securing a peace deal with Russia following his meeting with Vladimir Putin on Friday.
And here with us now to talk about it is Marc Short. He served as White House Legislative Affairs Director during the first Trump administration. He was also the former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence. He's currently the board chair for Advancing American Freedom. What did you think, Marc, of these events that you saw today? And then that meeting we saw with the world leaders in their own little way pressuring President Trump to take steps that he sort of pulled back from?
Well, look, I think there's a lot we don't know at this point. I think it is good that the president is convening this sort of a meeting, and I think it's good for Zelensky to have his allies at the table for the president to hear from as well. I think it's important that we step back and remember, again, who the one who's initiated this conflict was Putin, and he's violated every agreement since he attained leadership in Russia. And I think that he's looked to reassemble the old Soviet Union. And so we've talked a lot about, what sort of concessions would Ukraine make. And I think if you're Ukraine, you got to be wondering, why are we talking about the ones needing to give up concessions at this point? In 1994, there was an agreement between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine that in exchange for them, as the old Soviet Union collapsed, in exchange for them giving up their nuclear weapons, there would be security agreements to protect the integrity of their territorial lines, and that Putin would respect them. He has not respected them. He's seized territory during the Obama administration in Crimea. He seized territory in the Biden administration. And so I think there's a lot of questions about what sort of guarantees would you have to suggest that Putin would not do it again.
Notably, though, President Trump seems to have put the ball in Zelensky's court by saying that you've got to give up Crimea, and he claimed to Crimea, and that essentially you can't join NATO, even though there might be some Article 5-like agreement in place. We don't really know what that means at this point. Why do you think Trump is so focused on getting concessions, on dictating concessions to Zelensky, but not really doing that with Putin?
I think he's looking to get a deal, obviously, Boris. And I think that, again, we all want peace, but it's peace at what price? I'm not familiar with when Russia got to dictate who could join NATO. And so I think that again is like, it's a major concession to be able to basically allow Putin to dictate the terms of who is actually going to be allowed to join NATO. And again, it's this continual aggression of taking pieces of Ukraine piece by piece and then breaking additional deals. So why would this one necessarily stick? I don't know why we aren't taking a position instead of basically arming Ukraine to defend themselves. No one's talking about sending American troops, but giving them the resources. Everybody said that when Russia invaded Ukraine 3.5 years ago, it'd be a matter of hours before they could basically capture all of Ukraine. It's 3.5 years later. And so they've never really actually had the weapons they need to defend themselves. Let's allow them to defend themselves.
They've had an amazing will to defend themselves. As the president looks at how he's approaching this, and initially he was saying, I'd get a peace so quickly, I'd get it in 24 hours. He wants peace. He's clearly maneuvering for a peace prize, and he would like that. But as he's looking for this and he wants to move definitively towards peace, how does he have to think about other countries looking at what he's doing and how he's approaching this as they, not involved in this conflict, have to worry about what it means for them in future conflicts?
It's a great question, Brianna. I think you have to be concerned about what is China witnessing as they watch this and their interest in Taiwan. So there's a lot of other impact. I think the president doesn't have to go far to learn. Look at his first administration. In his first administration, he denied Nord Stream 2. He eliminated over 100 Russian mercenaries in Syria when they overstepped. He had serious sanctions on Russia. He had peace. If you want to attain peace, it showed that his peace came through strength in his first administration, not through appeasement.
We were just speaking with Ambassador John Bolton, who I think you ran into in the green room a moment ago, and he was talking about how the MAGA base might respond to the idea that the U.S. is going to provide security guarantees, this sort of backstop that's been described multiple times. The president has expressed skepticism up until today about having U.S. troops in Ukraine. He's outright denied that would happen, but today he didn't negate the idea altogether. Is that a sign of anything, or is he just being diplomatic?
It's a great question, Morris, because I would be surprised and shocked to see actually American troops be provided as part of a security agreement. Again, even the most hard line against Russia have not advocated sending American troops to Ukraine. They've just argued to allow Ukraine to have the weapons to defend itself.
There have been troops training American troops training Ukrainian forces in the past, and obviously there's still an alliance. But isn't that something that could be an ultimate deterrent to Vladimir Putin?
Yes. Again, I think there's a marked difference between the first administration and the second one. I think the first administration, he had advisors who were pretty united in their approach to Russia. I think this administration, there's a lot of division about how we should approach the engagement with Russia. Some that are more appeasing and isolationist, some that want to maintain a hard line. I think that Russia's shown that when you actually present strength, then Putin backs down. When he senses weakness, he advances.
A more broad-looking question, given that you just noted the differences in the two administrations and now the differing viewpoints in the White House, not only about the approach to Russia, but about investment overseas in other nations' security. What does it say about the Republican Party and conservatism, this sort of shift over time to a more Trump unilateral America First view?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that he's captured the party at this point, Boris, and I think that there's a lot of support for him personally, and I think that there's a lot that Republicans look at what he achieved in the first administration, want to give him a lot of latitude. But I think there's also been a shift inside the party on a lot of these decisions when it comes to foreign policy. We've talked on your show many times as well about the shift economically and far more intervention in the economy as opposed to a more laissez-faire approach. And so he's definitely having a huge impact on the party. There are many who still, I think, want to revert back to the America's strength broad message inside the party, but they don't want to go aside of the president. And so I think there's some that are just reluctant to have that encounter.
Marc Short, great to get your point of view. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.